What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to be going over my planetary qualifier list that top 8'd 3 different PQs from 3 different people that were in my Patreon. All right, so today I got a short video here. I've been keeping up with all the planetary qualifiers, and I actually played in the planetary qualifier at Pastime Games. Shout out to Ron. He was an amazing tournament organizer. TO did a great job. Everyone was super, super cool. And actually, Corey Bishop from Fantasy Flight Games was at this planetary qualifier. So I got a good chance to talk to him, sit down, chat with him. He even asked me for some feedback as a content creator, giving feedback on the game and tournaments and everything. He just had a great presence there. He traded with a bunch of people, so that was really, really fun. And just huge shout out to Pastime Games. So go check them out. I believe you might be able to order some things from them online. They're a big Star Wars Unlimited community in their area. That tournament was ran so smoothly. I believe the tournament was done by like 9 p.m. So it was, roughly a 12-hour tournament, I believe. So really, really great. So this is the list that I brought, and this list was actually edited from what it was, and there isn't some radical shifts here, but there were a lot of shifts to the meta. And this list was actually changed with my Patreon, and it wasn't just like I gave them the list. I had the original list, but then we all kind of worked together and did a lot of testing, and we found that this is the list that does well into the aggregated meta. And I'm going to talk through each of the cards and the decisions here. His Dudeness, otherwise known as Jason, I believe. You might have heard of the Millennium Falcon controversy that went off in Dallas PQ. He also was on my Patreon list, and he got it from us. So that list was also another top 8. So we had myself, I believe Cotton Ball, Mickey D, and his Dudeness. So 4 people that ran our Patreon list top 8'd a PQ or got into top cut. I'm going to talk through the list here and kind of talk through the decisions on how this list evolved. So we actually did a town hall in the Patreon. We talked through how this deck works, and you might think like, what is going on here? You got some anti-synergies, and that's actually very intentional. So Sabine really, really struggles into the double cunning matchups, Boba Yellow and Han Yellow. And if you're playing against a really, really good Han Yellow player, Green Sabine will lose that matchup. If you're playing against a good Han Yellow, they will lose. And last night we saw Chrono from KTOD, probably one of the best Green Sabine players out there. He kind of has made the deck what it is. He's very, very good. He lost to a Han Yellow player in the finals at a PQ. And that kind of goes to show when you watch that matchup, it was honestly kind of felt like a cakewalk from the perspective of the Han Yellow player. Chrono is a good player and he played very, very well. But unfortunately, double cunning counters Sabine in a really, really strong way. There is one way to beat those double cunning matchups, and I tested this list into some of the top yellow player in the game right now, and it started to win. And how this deck gets around that and answers that meta deck is by swarming. If you can swarm the board, you can outpace yellow because their tempo can't tempo you enough. And if they spend their resources tempoing and you're still getting in damage, you're going to eventually untap after their tempo is, they run out of gas otherwise, and you can just win from there. Of course, if the yellow player draws double cunning, triple cunning, that's tough to beat, but I've actually won into those matchups. And so what we want to do here is you're going to see a lot of 1-drops. And I know this is the end of set 2 here, so this list is going to get kind of blown up quite a bit. But we have a lot of 1-drops. Heroic Resolve is absolutely wild. This card can push for a lot of damage. And we found that you can play Cartel Turncoat with Heroic Resolve on turn 1, and you can get around the Falcon play. Any deck that's playing Falcon cannot kill a 3/4 because Cartel Turncoat becomes a 3/4. And the way Falcon works is you will always get that online before the Falcon can attack because it takes 3 actions to attack with the Falcon. You have to resource with Han. You have to then play the Falcon, then you have to attack with the Falcon. And so you get to play Cartel Turncoat, play Heroic Resolve, and claim the initiative, and they cannot kill your turn 1 play. And that also works very well into the Boba matchup, where if they don't have McClunky, you can get that Turncoat to be a 4 toughness and just get around all of their removal and all of their space units. And that's really, really strong. Additionally, we have the Blaster there. And you might think, oh, are you playing 2 cards a turn on turn 1? Not always. Sometimes you play A-Wing or Sabine unit, and then you follow it up with A-Wing Turncoat, and you just completely flood the board. You have you have 7 pumps in the main deck, right? You have Heroic Resolve, the Blaster, and Pretty Surprise to essentially finish the game out. And then you have a lot of tempo with Bamboozle and Leia to take care of experience tokens, Darksaber, Child Sin, Boba's Armor. You have just a lot of ways to get around all of that shenanigans. And the Leia also can be a flex 1-drop, which can kind of help you flood the board or tap down the Boba unit in the green or yellow matchups. And so this deck just has a lot of game in a lot of ways. And it's a very high skill deck in terms of how do you sequence, what matchups do you sequence, when do you want to get a big unit with Wing Leader, or when do you want to flood the board? And once you understand that, you realize you can really just continually push damage every turn. And this list has rewarded us. As you can see, we had 4 PQ top 8s or top cuts with this deck. I really think if it wasn't for Boba Green, every top cut that this deck was played, the yellow Sabine lost to a Boba Green player. And Boba Green didn't do this well this weekend, actually. There was a top 8 that didn't even have a Boba Green player, and this is recording this on October 20th. So it is very possible that this deck could have taken down a PQ, just really rough with that Boba matchup. It's probably the hardest matchup, believe it or not. But it's still a strong deck. And you're going to see that L3, you might think, what is that L3 doing in here? That card has been an all-star. The fact that it's a shielded unit, and then you can kind of play that Blaster on it for 1. You don't even have to smuggle the Blaster. You can just pay 1 and then attack with the L3 for 4. You have a 4/2 shielded unit that's just going to push damage for most of the game. And it's also a yellow unit, so you have all these yellow units that are really cheap. And it helps your Sabine unit get that invulnerability, static ability, which says if there are 3 aspects among other friendly units, this unit can't be attacked. And so your Sabine leader is red. And if you play 1 unit, that Sabine unit essentially is invulnerable to attacks. And that can win you so many games. The Sabine unit's also a great target for the Blaster, and so is the Sabine leader. I call the Blaster like a mini Darksaber because you're paying 1 for 2 damage instead of 4 for 4 damage on the Darksaber. So it's our version of a mini Darksaber. And it also has that unique ability to smuggle for those grindier matchups. And then you're going to see here the 1 copy of Sneak Attack. That is for the Fleet Lieutenant and the K2, and that's really there to help you get that reach after those green villain decks play Overwhelming Barrage. And I actually won a couple of games in my PQ where I sneak attacked the Fleet Lieutenant, which is still one of the best combinations of direct damage in the game. It's still just the best one, right? 1 action, 2 resources, 5 to base if they don't have a Sentinel. That is very strong. The Cassian's in there against those control decks, so we got some main deck against control. And we got the Valiants to help against the Red Ray and the Blue Han. And we got Kira in there to essentially just be a silver bullet. If your opponent has an out, you play that and you can kind of take their out. It's a very good card, can help get rid of their bombs, can help get rid of Overwhelming Barrage against the Kira matchup. And, you know, as we've seen, every yellow hero deck that's playing Kira is doing well. And so we're playing 2 copies of that to help us. Essentially, if we establish 3 or 4 units early, we can play that Kira to stop their board wipe and continue pushing damage in the arena that we want to push damage. And that is the last thing I'm going to say about the main deck here, is that this deck can also dodge pretty hard. If they go space with a really strong space unit and you don't have a good answer, you can just play, you know, turn 1 Sabine, turn 2 L3 Leia unit, into, you know, Wing Leader, into Cassian. It's just, you can just go ground and you can win with the ground. And the Blaster obviously is there for the Sabine leader, but if you do go ground, really push a lot of damage with that Blast. Found that against Han Yellow, if you play L3 with Initiative and they play a Rogue Operative, you can play that Blaster from Smuggle and actually hit the Rogue Operative and kill their unit. And then next you can claim again and kill their next unit, and then you can just flood the board, and they have a really hard time coming back from that. So we're going to pivot to the sideboard here. What's going on the sideboard is a bit interesting. We got 2 Wreckers. So the Wrecker got moved to the sideboard because we found out that Wrecker is really, really, really good in the matchups that he's really, really good. But he's not good into the fast matchups. And that is the double cunning matchups in the green Sabine and the Kylo yellows and the other fast decks and the Lando reds. And so we realized there's too much fast decks in the meta, and Wrecker just needed to go to the sideboard. And then you might look at that Heroic Sacrifice and be like, why do you have more gas in the sideboard? And again, for those double cunning matchups, those green Sabine matchups, we just want to go even faster. We're going to pull in sneak attacks, Heroic Sacrifices, and we're going to take out all of our top end, which would be the Valiants, and maybe a couple for causes, because our deck's going to get very yellow and non-heroism based. And so we're just going to pull in all the pumps, pull in the sneak attacks, and go even faster. And we're just going to outrace those decks. And again, I have never had a problem with racing. Green Sabine has no idea what's coming. When you play this deck, you're often very favored in that matchup in game 2 and 3, because even if they ECL your turn 1 play, you're just going to push insane damage in whatever arena you dodge in. And so I found that to be very strong. If they play turn 1 A-Wing, like L3 into a blaster is so good, they often cannot deal with that. So that has been very, very strong. And then the Pirated Starfighters in here, we're in here. I would probably take those out, because the Pirated Starfighters are really there for bounties. So if your opponent gets a client or gets top target, you can bounce your own unit with Pirated Starfighter and then replay it, especially because you got all these cheapo units probably going to be targeting like a 1 drop. And so you can play Pirated Starfighter, bounce the turncoat, replay the turncoat, and clean all those bounties off your units. And that's the interesting part of Pirated Starfighter, is the client actually does not add a physical upgrade bounty. It's a static bounty. And so the Pirated Starfighter can kind of cleanse that card for you so that you can replay it. And then the Pirated Starfighter is also just another Falcon unit. It's a 3/4 on attack, so it's very strong. And then the one change I would make here, I feel like I needed more Spark of Rebellions. I feel like that card was really good into the Green Villain. Oftentimes I had space, and Green Villain just needed to play 1 OB Overwhelming Barrage to win the game. And that is, I ended up wanting more than 1 copy in my deck. I think I would have probably put more. And so all in all, this deck did very, very well. If you're looking to go to a PQ, definitely check this deck out. You can join the Patreon down below. I'll have that linked. And we're already testing set 3 stuff. Quinlan Voss is going to be an insane deck. We already have a very strong deck. Yellow Sabine is getting even faster and oddly more consistent in set 3. Hate to say it, but Sabine is not going anywhere. Based off everything I've seen in the meta, none of the leaders in set 3 are anywhere near as good as Sabine in terms of an aggro leader. That's just my early take. Just kind of fun game theory fundamentals. It's just Sabine's got a ping attack. Sabine's got earliest deploy in the game, tied for earliest deploy. And then 5 toughness is demarkedly better than 4. And so a lot of these new leaders that are coming out that are 4-drop, 4 deploys, they have 4 toughness, and that's just too weak. In my opinion, there's too many answers to 4 toughness leaders. Sabine having that 5 toughness makes her just resilient in very interesting ways. And then lastly, what I'll say here is we are also getting more rebels. So I'll flash this on my screen, but Jin Urso is a rebel in Sabine color that was spoiled. And so actually we got a very strong unit. I know it's a 3/2, but I think it's definitely a sideboard card, guaranteed, if not main deck. This card is really interesting, and I think poses some problems for some of the aggro decks that want to kind of control early. A 3/2 on turn 1 is very strong, especially if you lane dodge. And so I'm excited to kind of see this card come out. It's got Saboteur, which again is just kind of what Sabine needed. And right now I'm actually holding in my hands roughly 31 unspoiled cards from set 3 that I got in my press kit. Check out my channel on Tuesday. I'll be launching that and showing like an overview of every card that wasn't spoiled yet. But I mean, I'm holding one right now in my hand that I'm calling a better surprise strike, and we'll be showing that. And so I'm excited to show you this card right here. And so that'll be coming, and I'm super excited to go to my pre-release and again start testing. Additionally, my Patreon exists inside the Bothan network. So if you're looking to find games, talk with other people, talk about tournaments, talk about events, we often do streaming in there, and you can kind of get involved and kind of listen to other people live, and talk about different deck techs and different ideas. The Bothan Network is a great place for that right now. There's just a lot of community engagement going on, which has been really, really cool. And it's been just a super, super fun and positive environment. So definitely check that out. That'll be linked down below in the description. And thanks a lot to my patrons. This list was, again, collaborated on. It's not just, not one person is, the best in the game, right? Oftentimes a network of people, pun intended, is going to help you produce a better list over time, because you're going to be testing against good players, and so that's going to help you. And then 2, you're going to be getting those final deck lists faster by weeding out the cards that don't perform. And you can do that collectively. So join the Botha Network to kind of learn more about this game, and then check out my Patreon if you're looking for more competitive content in terms of deck lists. We do town halls, we do live playing where we kind of like do a group play and watch, and it's been very, very fun. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. So thanks so much, and talk to you later.